Naming a baby is one of the most important things you're going to do as a parent, and people look for inspiration for those names just about everywhere, including their favorite media. Let me tell you right up front, the Mad Max universe is probably one you're going to want to stay away from when it comes to finding a name for little Junior. Today we're going to take a look at the characters in the Mad Max universe and see just how bad some of these names would be to give a baby. We're going to start off with what we're going to call normal names. And these are going to be names that if you give them to your kid, no one's even going to realize that you're naming that child after a Mad Max character. We've got Barry, right? Very normal. Then we move into Big Rebecca. Now, Big is a nickname, right? So I don't think that's what you're going to give your kid as a starter. And so we're going to keep that as a consideration when we're looking at this. If there's a title that gets put onto it, we're not going to count that as the name, right? They've earned that as time has gone by. And so we're just looking at this as Rebecca itself. And Rebecca is a perfectly normal name. Charlie, Jack, Jedediah even, Jessie, Jim, Joe here, Immortan Joe, is going to fall into that same thing as Big Rebecca. He's given himself that title and everything. If you feel like there could be a new Immortan when Immortan Joe dies, then I think that that's going to let us drop that. If we kept Immortan on there, he would definitely be up on the list. But if it's just Joe, he's down here. Johnny, Mary, Max, May, and Nathan are going to round out that category. Like I said, this is the boring category. Not to say that if your name is down here, it's a boring name, but compared to some of the other names we're going to run to, definitely they are. Then we're going to move up into the go for it tier. And so these are going to be names where, they may not be the most conventional names, but you could definitely see like, oh yeah, I know somebody named that, or I could definitely see somebody being named that one, and it wouldn't really be that big of a deal. Start with Ace here and then Bubba. And then we get our first kind of unique one with Capable, right? I think that that's definitely one I could see some people using. Glory is in there too. Sars is another one where it's like, I don't see anybody getting made fun of for it because I can't really think of a joke off of it. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But personally, I didn't see a problem with that one. Savannah is in there. And then Savannah Nix as a name with both of them. Like neither of those really I think could be a problem. And then Zeta also. Maybe it's just a cultural thing, right? Maybe this is a completely normal name. That's another thing to consider is that I'm just going off what are normal names here in the United States. And so, this series is made in Australia. So there's definitely some that might slip through the cracks for me on that one. So now we've kind of cleared those names where I'm like, yeah, I don't really see any problems with those ones. And we move up into what I'm calling bully bait. And these are going to be names where, if there's that mean kid and they get a nickname kind of latched on to that kid's name, it could be trouble for them. Maybe it's the way that the character looks that adds onto this one for me, but Benno, for some reason, I think of Beano. I'm thinking if your kid is gassy at all, this is going to be a problem, right? This is going to be a kid that farts and people are going to make fun of him for it. Furiosa is one where it's like, oh yeah, when you're an adult and you're fighting and all this stuff, yeah, that's cool. Or even like if you're just in normal life, right? Because that's what we're talking about. Normal life here on Earth as it is today. Furiosa, sure, whatever, as an adult, but I think about like a baby named Furiosa, or even like in the movie, it's like this little girl named Furiosa. It's kind of silly. I'm going to put Midge in this category too, as well as Giddy, Miss Giddy. Keeper of the Seeds. I'm just going to say it's Keeper. It's one where I'm like, it's kind of cool. Like I could kind of see it as a name. Morsov, Papagallo. Again, these could just be like last names or common names in Australia that I just don't recognize or don't know. But then we get to one that's the first one that kind of struck me when it came to like kind of organizing these, and that's Scuttle. Now, Scuttle, if you're not aware, is also the name of a character from The Little Mermaid. And the fact that there's a name that links those two, to me, is pretty funny. You always need to be aware of where these names can also pop up in pop culture, right? You could be naming your kid after this Scuttle, but everybody that they know is going to be thinking about, the bird from The Little Mermaid. Slake is in here for me too, as well as Valkyrie. Now I know Valkyrie is one that my wife heard that I put this one in this tier and she was like, no, that name's cool. And I'm not saying it's not cool. I'm just saying you got to be aware of kids, all right? And how mean and nasty they can be. Then the finish off, we got Wes and Ziggy. Whenever I think of Ziggy, I think of this comic strip, and this is really dating myself, but like the comic strip character that used to be in newspapers. I swear I'm not as old as I sound right now. From there, we're going to move up into Are You Naming a Dog? And these are names that I think would be great for dogs, but not for kids, because they are not interchangeable, at least in my opinion. You got Tina Turner's character, Aunty Entity. I think it's kind of cool, like especially if you're like getting an older dog or something. I think like that can be a fun energy that's coming with that one. Bearclaw is a fantastic name for a dog. You get the reference here. You also get a donut reference, so that's always a win. Another food one, or at least it sounds like a food one, Cheedo. I put it in this one because I think Cheedo is a good name for a dog, but an awful name for a kid. If you name your kid Cheedo, spell it like this, but you don't expect kids to like be making fun of them and calling them Cheeto, you're living in a fantasy world. Don't live there. Like your kid will suffer because of it. Coma-Doof Warrior, all of the ways that you can mix that together, just Doof Warrior, Coma-Doof. All of those I think are great ways to kind of address a dog. The Dag is one that I kind of have really been drawn to as well, just because I like to call dogs dog. Like when I meet a random dog, I'd rather somebody doesn't tell me its name because most of the time I'm just going to forget it anyway. I have a hard enough time remembering people's names. I don't need to try to like lodge every dog name in there too. And so I like to call dogs dog, and the Dag is close enough. And also Dag reminds me of Daggett from Angry Beavers. So again, a dated cartoon reference. Dr. Dealgood, pretty solid. Fang is just a normal dog name. Feral Kid, I don't know. I think it works good. The kid's pretty much a dog anyway. Fifi, another normal dog name, and something that just doesn't really fit this guy, especially when you look at him and it's like from the part of Mad Max where it's like it's not even that crazy yet, and this guy's named Fifi. Maybe it's a real normal name in Australia. I don't know. Is Fifi normal in Australia? Is that just everybody goes around named Fifi? Do people have grandpas named Fifi? Lair's kind of cool, but Lord Humungus is fantastic. What a name. If you got your dog named Lord Humungus, Lord anything is good, is very solid. Knight Rider, that's fine. Nux, I kind of really like that as a dog name. Roop, fine. Smeg is good. I hate this character though. He is the worst. I don't like him at all in Furiosa. Toady and Toast, two very solid names for dogs. And then Warrior Woman, just hear me out. I have no rationale, so I guess there's nothing to hear. I just think it's fun. And so that finishes off the tiers that have any kind of like goodwill left in them. From here on out, it's just kind of levels of badness. We'll start off with the second from the top, which is going to be, do you hate your kid? Blackfinger, the Bullet Farmer. Like, why in the world would you name your kid the Bullet Farmer? I understand that's a title that he's got in the movie, right? And I'm kind of like mixing my rules here a little bit, but we don't know the guy's real name. And so I'm going to say Bullet Farmer is his name. It's all you ever hear anybody call him. Clunk the Collector, they're not great. Curmudgeon, this one was a little bit of an argument between me and my wife. She thought it was a great dog name. I don't want to name my dog something that's going to kind of give it that kind of grumpy energy, right? I want to give that dog its best foot forward with a name. And so that's why we go with things like Bearclaw. Diabando, I think that's how you say it. No good. Grease Rat, that should be self-explanatory. Ironbar, the same. This one, though, may be my favorite on the entire list. Rizdale. Rizdale is a trap name, right? The word Riz is popular right now, right? And you might think, oh, this is a way to kind of encapsulate the moment or whatever. Don't do it. Don't. Trendy names are dangerous because you don't know how that's going to adapt. You don't know how it's going to change. It's too new. Riz is too new. I may be too mean on this name. Maybe it deserved to be in the dog one. I will not look at you poorly if you name your dog Rizdale. It's just not a decision I personally would make. Screw Loose, again, something your dog might kind of eventually grow into being called. Not the name I would give it at the beginning. Silver Tongue, at least this one's kind of positive, right? If someone's silver tongued, then they can be persuasive and kind of smart and everything, but it's usually kind of in a negative light. Like when someone gets called that, you silver tongued devil, right? It's always like that. It's never like, you silver tongued angel. You've just talked me into doing that thing I didn't really want to do. Slit just doesn't feel good. Sprog, also not great. This is Mad Max's kid. What are you doing? You're naming this kid like the world ain't over yet, dude. You don't have to be naming your kid weird stuff. Sprog. If this is a normal name in Australia, I apologize for all the Sprogs out there. Starbuck, too close to Starbucks. You just can't do it. Station Master, that's just really weird. And then Tauntaun. First off, my brain goes to the monsters from Star Wars, and they're not particularly cool monsters. They're like weird frozen horses. They make stupid sounds. But then in like kind of looking into it a little bit, it looks like Tauntaun is like French slang for uncle. And it's just a weird thing to name your kid. Name your kid uncle. It's just a weird energy. I don't think that that's something any kid would want. And that brings us up into the last tier, the worst tier. Call Child Services is what I'm calling this one, because these ones should just be all perfectly self-explanatory why you wouldn't want to name your kid this, right? Corpus Colossus. Again, super metal, not something you want to name a baby. Cundalini. There's some things that I think this one is alluding to that you just don't want to have your kid be associated with. Dementus. Again, remember, you're the one's going to raise this kid. You want to give this kid that kind of energy at the beginning of all of it. You want them to be coming at you being like, I am Dementus. No. Master Blaster, technically two names. Master and Blaster are two separate characters, but they are one being, and they fight together, right? They're pretty useless without the other. Mudguts, it's too gross. Octoboss, sounds like a Metal Gear Solid bad guy. So that's pretty cool. Again, not arguing that these names aren't cool. It's just how much when you put that on the birth certificate and your kid is looking at it later in life and they're just like, what were they thinking? Organic Mechanic, he introduces himself as this, right? Like when he gets asked like, hey, who are you? In Furiosa, he's like, I'm the Organic Mechanic. So that's his name. And hey man, way to go all in on your profession. So like giving your kid this name would be like saying like, I'm going to name my kid Doctor. I'm sure there are people that do that. I disagree with them on that being a good decision. People Eater is a no-go, right? The name itself is gross. But then also anything that's going to have people like looking this guy up is something you're not going to want to do. You don't want this guy associated with your kid. Pig Killer also. Just no. Saying this name out loud may get me demonetized. But Rictus Erectus, shouldn't have to explain that one. Plus the added elements of him in the new movie in Furiosa. It's a no-go. You don't want that. In fact, he's so bad that like his brother comes off a little bit better. And that guy's name is Scrotus. Scrotus. Don't do it. Like, I'm begging you, man. It feels bad to end on Toe Cutter, right? Because it's like, it's not as obviously like, don't name your kid that, but like compared to Scrotus, it's not that bad. If I had the choice, if it was like, hey, one or the other, you're going Toe Cutter. And that kind of finishes up my list. Thanks so much for being here and checking it out. Don't forget that I do have another Mad Max tier list talking about the cars in the series. You can check it out. And then also make sure to let me know what your choices are for the worst and best names from the series to give to a baby. Take care. I'll see you next time.